Let's go.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much to Diego and Rocio for the organization of this hackathon and this event. And thank you to the panelists for being with us today. It's wonderful to share stage with these remarkable leaders, thought leaders working on energy, public policy, working on STEM education for a very, very long time, like the case of David. And I am just honored to be a part of this panel. I will do my best to convey all the different messages that you have to share, knowing that each one of you could spend 3 hours or 4 hours just talking about a little bit of the work that you're doing. So it is a great honor. Thank you to all the participants here today, to all the contestants in the hackathon. Good luck. And just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Sentís. I am the founder and CEO of the World Innovation Alliance, which is a private network of 1,000 experts from 150 different countries working on solving problems in healthcare, environment, human rights, and education. And we do it through innovation, through policy recommendations, working on multi-stakeholder collaboration, and trying to look for the most scalable solutions to improve and expand access to education and other economic development tools to try to make things a little bit better. And without further ado, we're going to be presenting the panelists, and of course the panel today that is going to be talking about the importance of STEM and math-based careers. I think that we all can agree that STEM is extremely important in order to face the challenge that we have ahead. STEM is crucial to foster innovation, to foster scientific research. It is crucial to create the actual solutions for the problems that we're facing, from healthcare to environment to many other problems. STEM education and the responsibility that we all have to foster the actual development of new ways to learn, and the encouragement to kids, not only boys but also girls, try to encourage everyone to be more involved in STEM education is going to help us to have the actual solutions that we need. So I think the most important thing today is trying to look for the actual practical recommendations that we have for different stakeholders to try to encourage STEM education, try to improve the way we are educating, try to innovate the space, try to bring more people together, and see what can be done from governments, from companies, from education institutions, and also from parents. What can we do to foster STEM education? A couple of notes before we start. There's a few stats that I wanted to share with all of you. First of all, that the STEM growth is increasingly fast. We see a 10.5% increase between 2020 and 2030, which is the highest growth in all the other categories in education. We see that most new jobs are going to come from STEM education. And in fact, we see that there are three main areas where STEM is going to play a fundamental role. One being healthcare, another one technology, and thirdly, biology and environment. That obviously is something that everybody's extremely concerned about right now. Also, very importantly, we see that even though STEM is growing, only 6% of jobs, for example, in the US, 10 million jobs are STEM jobs. And it's clear that the more we encourage STEM education, the more we're going to be able to fulfill the jobs that the market is demanding in the coming years. Also, there's more and more advocacy around the importance of coding, the importance of computer science, and there's many different careers that come from math that are, in many cases, the best paying jobs for all the market. And many times we're just not aware of what are the potential opportunities that come after studying math or having a little bit more of a STEM background. So things like computer science, finance, of course, investment, insurance, engineering. We see opportunities with the meteorologists, mathematical modelers, quantitative financial analysts. We see a great increase in medical scientists. We see increase in statisticians, actuary, software developers, data scientists, and many other professions. So the key question is, what can we do about this? Because clearly, most people are not prepared to adapt to a world where STEM is so needed, and yet most people are so far away from this space. And now I wanted to introduce our panelists. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start giving you the stage to introduce yourself for 5 minutes and tell us a little bit about your work. And then we will move to the questions. Okay, so I'm going to start doing the introductions one by one. And I think we can start with David, because I believe he has a presentation. So David Lakin is the head of education at Institution of Engineering and Technology. And he's going to share with us a little bit of statistics and the work that they're doing that is remarkable in an institution that happens to be one of the largest engineering institutions in the world, with more than 169,000 members in 150 countries. So please, David, can you share with us your presentation, and then we will move on to the rest of the panelists. But just to have a brief introduction, we also have with us Walt Patterson, Associate Fellow of Energy, Environment and Resources Program at Chatham House, working on energy and way more. And also we have with us Kate from, one second, I want to read your position property. So we have Kate Roll, Assistant Professor at UCL Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose. And we will do a little bit more of introduction about you later. So if you can hear me, David, and you're ready, let's go with your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, let me just share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that. If I could just get a quick thumbs up just to make sure that you can see that. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name's David Lakin. I'm Head of Education, Safeguarding and Education Policy at the IET. And my role is all around trying to inspire more young people into STEM, which of course is science, technology, engineering and maths, and hopefully then into a career in engineering. So everything that Carlos has just said there in that introduction is very, very relevant and very important about why STEM is so important and the need going forward. So I know I've only got a few minutes to speak, so I'll be really quick. So who is the IET? The Institution of Engineering and Technology. Well, we're 151 years old. We're what's called a professional engineering institution, a PEI, and we are the largest PEI outside of the US. We've got offices here in the UK, over in China, in Hong Kong, and in India, and also in the US. And we've got over 56,000 members globally. So 156,000 members who are engineers and technicians that are part of the IET. So why do we do this? Why is the IET so big on STEM education and trying to inspire the next generation? So what is the problem? Well, to put it bluntly, there's a huge shortage of young people coming through into engineering careers, people with STEM skills that are being developed at school level and then on to a career. So if we put this into numbers here in the UK, there's a need of 124,000 engineers and technicians that are needed each year, and in addition to that, 79,000 with the appropriate engineering skills. And then to put that into context, each year we have a shortfall of around 59,000 engineers. So that's a huge amount that we are missing from young people coming through into the profession. And STEM education, particularly at school, then through to higher education and further education, means that we could shorten that gap, and more young people can progress into a career in engineering or into STEM related subjects. So how can we support you through that? How can the IET help? Well, as I said, we're a membership organisation, and we have scholarships and bursaries that are available for young people. So you can have a scholarship or a bursary to continue your studying. We are a membership organisation, so we've got various different types of membership packages, including a student membership for for young people at college and at university. And we've also got a teacher membership. So this is for teachers and lecturers who want to be part of the IET, to access all our material and make sure that their own learning and CPD is up to speed, so they are informed for when they're in the classroom talking to young people. We do continuous professional development, CPD, and that's through things like Career Manager, which is a platform for you to access all your CPD, keep a log of it, keep all your records up to date, and then use that further down the line in your career. IET Academy, so this is an online resource, a little bit like Open University, where you can learn and study in your own time. Professional registration, so you can become professionally registered through the IET, so you can become a chartered engineer and have professional letters after your name. And a load of networking and engagement opportunities, so whether that's through networking with other colleagues from the same industry, or networking and engaging with other organisations at other events. So a huge opportunity there to expand knowledge and meet and speak to others. But probably to summarise, it's what we call a professional engineering home for life. So from a young person who joins and takes part in some STEM initiatives, all the way through their professional career, all the way through to retirement, and even at retirement they come back and volunteer and support in trying to inspire that next generation. But the IET provides a professional engineering home for life. So I know that was super quick and I didn't have long, but thank you very much, and obviously we'll be taking some questions shortly after that. So thank you, and I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, David. Well, it's wonderful, the job that your organization is doing, and I can imagine how aware you must be of the skills that are needed in order to create more engineers to fill those gaps in the future. So maybe we can go and talk about that in a minute. I wanted now to go with Kate Roll. I really admire the work she's been doing. And also, not only because she is studying the topics that I am the most interested in, which is innovation, public purpose, and development, but also because she's been doing a lot of work in the ground. She's been doing research in Timor-Leste. She's been, I believe, in Kenya and the Philippines. She has been engaged with the University of Oxford, not only in UCL, and also with different UN agencies, I believe. And I wanted to ask you about your vision. I guess you may bring a little bit of perspective from the public policy angle, but I wanted just to ask you, what do you think is relevant in this space, and where should we move forward?
Great, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to take part in this panel. I'll tell you a little bit about myself as sort of a long way to get into this question. So I am a political scientist by training, and I am the head of teaching at the Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose at UCL, where we have a MPA program where we really focus on the state and innovation and bringing those two together. And then I also teach at Oxford, where I worked for quite a while, on innovation strategy. So talking about how we move from these big bang innovations, from these, what we discover in the lab, and how it moves through to commercialization and all of that. So I look at innovation through a few different lenses, a government policy lens and a more entrepreneurial lens, but a core interest of mine. And I think the perspective that I bring in both those classrooms is what we actually have on all our logos at IIPP, on all our tote bags, which is the phrase "innovation is political," and we mean a few different things by that. I think the sort of way that a lot of people, including Professor Mariana Mazzucato, who leads the Institute, the way she sees it is there's a real role for the state in innovation. The state puts money into basic research, but all the way up through commercialization, and really key state investments have shaped things. She often talks about the space program in the US, which had these incredible spillover effects in nutrition, material science, GPS, everything you love about your iPhone is because of investment by the state, at least at some point in its journey. So thinking about innovation is political in that sense. I also think about innovation as political sort of in other senses, both that, the way we direct our innovation and science and technology policy has effects on all of us as citizens, how we interact, the air we breathe, the roads we drive on, but then also that, what is our civic role? What is our role as participants in the state to shape how we want innovation to be? How do we want privacy to be governed? How do we want data to be governed? So there's some really interesting innovations political angles from that side. I think the other piece of my work that's interesting is I lead the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, the UK network here, which is a collection of about 20 universities across the UK, and it's tied to the UN's Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And it looks, it's about higher education focus on the SDGs, of course, where a huge amount of the important work that's happening there is from STEM subjects. So, and I'm sure Walt will speak about this more, but very important research happening in the UK on clean energy, on different uses of hydrogen. So very, very important contributions from STEM into achieving the SDGs, and a very important nexus around governments supporting green transitions, higher education, and school systems supporting the engineers and the knowledge base, these horizontal policies that allow us to have these really important, achieve these important missions that'll be absolutely vital for achieving the SDGs and dealing with global heating. Maybe a final thing to say is, I'm often in classrooms encouraging social scientists to work on technology. I'm often making the opposite case where I'm saying there's too many engineers, we need more anthropologists. So it's kind of funny to be making the case we need more engineers. Of course, I'm fully in support of that. But I think maybe what we should be talking about is not just more engineers, but also more multidisciplinary teams.
Yep.
I think it's extremely important for innovation. It's extremely important for good policy. It's extremely important for good design. I often joke that Mark Zuckerberg should not have dropped out of university. He should have taken some philosophy classes and some gender study classes and maybe some history classes, and he would have been a better engineer for it. And we have lots of really wonderful examples of that, both in the public and private sector, of the combination of designers, engineers, computer scientists, organizational scholars, people who are, good comms folks, all working together, and that being absolutely vital. And you have some real public goods that emerge from that, including things that are celebrated, like the government digital services here in the UK. So there's some really interesting cases, but I would make an argument for yes, more engineers, but yes, and let's also have more people from different backgrounds, having these skills, political scientists that have good analytical and statistical skills, and engineers that have good user-facing skills as well. And I'll pause there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. Well, I agree very much on everything you said. In fact, one of the biggest issues that we see is that there's millions of people that are not only willing, but also capable of helping to deal with the SDG problems. But most of the times, either we don't have the right calls to action, we don't have the right incentives, or we're just working. And we have these public and private sector divides, these ideological divides, and also, as you were mentioning, these disciplinary divides. And what we're doing in WIA precisely is bringing all sorts of professionals together, because we know that journalists have a role, that even you have students may have the ability to create solutions as well, or participate. Entrepreneurs definitely have a space, public policymakers, everybody is important, and we underestimate the ability of humans to collaborate, and we're so focused on competition and so focused on advocating for what we are to pretend, to basically have a better positioning of our own work and our own careers and organizations, that we're always leaving everything behind. And I feel very much a citizen of the world, and I also feel very much a person that has either no profession or works in between the multiple professions. And I just cannot agree more with that. We'll talk about that for an hour. So I'm just going to go directly to Walt because we want to hear from him as well. But maybe we can go back to you, Kate, and you let us know a little bit more of the actual solutions that you propose in order to foster that. And what are the ways that we encourage more innovation coming from the government, and also the involvement that those investments that the governments made can go back to the state, and not only in the shape of taxes, but also in terms of actual revenue that can be useful. I believe Mariana Mazzucato advocates for that as well. So that's my part. Walt, thank you so much for being here. It is a great honor. We want to hear about your work. I know you have been working very much on energy, but also I would like to just know your vision about everything that we've been discussing, what you're focused on, what are your concerns and your recommendations.
For 5 decades, since the end of 1960, I have found myself, rather to my surprise, working as a professional troublemaker, commenting particularly on energy policy and often writing and saying things that what you might call vested interests in the energy industry companies and governments didn't want to hear. I was very lucky. When I was 9 years old growing up in Canada, I had a children's encyclopedia, which was called the Book of Knowledge. And there was a magazine called Popular Science. And I read every issue of Popular Science from cover to cover. Its descriptions of the Bikini atom bomb tests in the US were stunning, and a lot of other information about scientific activity that was going on that I found enormously exciting. And it's obvious to me that if you want to get youngsters involved in STM subjects, you have to make it exciting. You have to get them a sense of a personal involvement, that there's going to be satisfaction and excitement about it. And it became clear to me as a youngster that nuclear physics, being written about in the newspapers and in the magazines, was the most exciting form of science. And I eventually became a postgraduate nuclear physicist. The more I read about nuclear power to generate electricity, the more alarmed I got about possible accidents and radioactive waste. And I eventually wrote a book, a paperback Penguin book entitled Nuclear Power, that became a bestseller and eventually sold some 130,000 copies in English and came out in 5 other languages. And like several of my books and much of my writing, it's now available as a free download from my online website archive, which is just called Walt Patterson on Energy. And if you're listening in, do Google it if you're interested, because I hope to try and make a lot of this information much more exciting for non-specialists and much more comprehensible. And my concern about nuclear power got me thinking about electricity in society. It is changing very fast. And I wrote a book called Transforming Electricity. I'm convinced that governments around the world are mistaken about the nature of these changes. My own government in the UK has tried for more than 20 years to set up what they call an electricity market, which is based on transactions in selling and buying kilowatt hours of electricity. And it misses the point completely. It regards electricity as a commodity, such as a fuel, to be consumed in use. But you can't store electricity, not as electricity. Essential forms of clean electricity, such as wind power and solar photovoltaics, are in fact what I like to call infrastructure electricity. You invest in a physical facility, such as a wind farm or a PV array, and throughout the lifetime of this physical array, it delivers useful electricity. Nothing is consumed, nothing is used up. You are harvesting natural energy flows, turning them into a form you can use. What I'm suggesting is a different way of thinking about this. And I hope that the innovation the innovation we need is that minds can change very fast. Different ways of thinking about this. Minds can change very fast. The physical facilities may take a while, but I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more exciting changes of mind. You're harvesting natural energy flows, turning them into a form you can use. and generating this infrastructure electricity entails only investment, but no continuing expense on fuel. The financial framework of this and the risk profile is very different from generating electricity as we have done traditionally for nearly a century, using fuel and fire. And the nature of this change, the financial change, invalidates the fundamental assumptions of the so-called electricity market. And the implications are profound. On my website, you can find my most recent book, which is again a free download, entitled Electricity versus Fire, The Fight for Our Future, which is what I think it is. So do please check it out. We humans are the only living creatures that can ignite and control fire. And using fire is now getting us into desperate trouble. Using fire is why you can't breathe in major cities and why we are upsetting the global climate. I'm now working on a book about how to try to get our human activity systems to converge gradually to harmonize with natural process systems. Wish me luck. That is where the change of mind and the innovation of thinking comes in. And I'm hoping to make it available through my own writing and my own talking. And I'm looking forward to having I do a lot of presentations to schools in the UK. Luckily I get invited to speak at schools, and it's important to make this information available in a way which is accessible and which is as exciting as I find it. Let's leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walt, and thank you for your work. I think the kids are very lucky to have you there in those schools, and it is wonderful that you are sharing, also making free the information available for free. And I think that you're absolutely right. We need to make these topics exciting. And I believe one of the biggest issues that we have with education is that we're not teaching kids, or we're not letting them know why they're learning the things they're learning. And we just tell them that this is important and they have to, instead of explaining to them how those math problems are actually going to be utilized in exciting things that they may be interested in, like, for example, rocket science, or just even the way you analyze sports, or when you see those math in action, when you're trying to develop a video game and you have a problem that you can solve through math, for example. So I think that making information available and being extremely generous like you are, and also trying to make it as exciting as possible and tackling very key important elements like energy crisis and, of course, the dangers of nuclear. I think it is wonderful. So thank you very much, Walt, for that. And I think, well, there's like 1,000 questions that I have for all of you. So I'm going to try to get myself together and just focus on one particular question, which is, first of all, for David, what do we need to do to encourage either schools or governments to push the kind of skills that are needed to have the engineers that we need? What is exactly the focus that we need to have in terms of what are the skills that are needed and what do we do about it?
Yeah, great question. I think unfortunately there's more than just one thing. There's not that one silver bullet that's going to solve this. I think a big thing is about embedding engineering and technology into the curriculum more. Okay. Obviously, science and mathematics are heavy in the curriculum, but technology and engineering is kind of lacking, particularly for very young at primary school age. Yeah. So I think there's a role there to make it more part of the curriculum rather than an extra activity, an extra curriculum kind of initiative. But I think just touching on something that you mentioned there about making it relevant for young people so they understand what they're doing. So when they're taking part in an activity, a STEM activity or a mathematics activity, that it's in a context that they can relate to. And therefore they've got more connection with it and understand the application of it. So I think if we make it relevant for young people, that really helps. Obviously the use of technology, young people are engaging more and more through technology, so utilising technology in a way to be able to do that. But also encouraging young people to not be afraid to fail. to be able to do experiments, do activities, and when they fail, that's not a bad thing. They learn from those mistakes, and they make things bigger and better. But probably most important of all is to have fun with it, is to learn through exploring, learn through play, and enjoy the learning experience.
Absolutely love it. Thank you very much. I do agree that more focus on actual technology and engineering is very important. Also, knowing more about technology and how to use technology to either solve problems, to develop your career, how technology is going to potentially affect us, even in the negative way. I think it's all very important. And the idea of encouraging to be willing to at least try, and then if they fail, they probably can learn things from that. One of the things that we're doing with Liceo Europeo, which is a pretty innovative school in Spain, is we are not only teaching them innovation and technology and how they can use it, but also they are creating projects of their own. And so every student, no matter the age, they're going to already be working on projects that are connected to technology. So for example, building a video game or doing something on the metaverse, plus some sort of connection with the real physical world. And they have also their own avatar where they are quantifying their growth. So they have all these skills as a video game character, and the more they grow, the better position they are to deal with the real world, but also they see and they take agency because they are the ones responsible for their growth, and it's not only about the grades. And we see that because even the ability to deal with failure or the ability to create new projects, those are actual skills that they're going to be learning. So I think it's very connected to that, and I really thank you for that, David. I agree with what you said. Now, Kate, I don't know why, I want to ask you, what do you think is wrong with the whole ecosystem? Also, what do you think the governments are not doing properly? What do you think the education system is maybe outdated in, or what are the biggest issues that you see? And then what are your biggest takes on how to fix it? Or what are the best possible paths that you see that could potentially help to make things better in a practical way?
It's a very good question, although I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer it. This is, there's some people who are really excellent who like David probably knows, who really work on STEM education policy.
I'm talking about innovation as well, Kate, because innovation is also something that is very much connected, as you said, public and the private sector. What are we doing properly, for example, in the European Union to foster innovation, or what are we not doing properly regarding innovation? Take it to your field of expertise.
No, I'm happy. So I think what I was saying is, there are better people to talk about overall policies. I think maybe I could take it from a couple different angles. We often talk about education as being a horizontal policy. So governments have vertical policies where they're thinking about the transportation sector, or they're thinking about farming or agriculture, but then they've got horizontal policies that benefit. Yeah, Walt. Oh, sorry, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, me too. Walt, do you want to say something?
You have reminded me that I was also very lucky. I had a wonderful teacher, a very exciting teacher in my grade school in Canada, who introduced me to other explorers and inventors and people who became young heroes of mine, because he made their activities so remarkable and so exciting. And this is again where governments really have a role, is to recognize the importance of good teachers and to pay them appropriately and to give them the status they deserve in society as being the most important people to create the framework for the young people to take it forward another generation. As I say, I was extremely lucky, and I have subsequently spent quite a bit of time in the UK as a private tutor, trying to rescue kids that had suffered under the kind of education they were getting from frequently very expensive education, places like Eton in the UK, terrible, terrible misinformation they were getting from and boring people rigid about the subject. So that I was doing rescue work on physics and maths, and it was quite rewarding to be able to do it, but they shouldn't have been, the kids shouldn't have been put in that position. I really resent resent the way teaching is regarded in the UK as something, you know, those who can do and those who can't teach.
Mm.
I've always thought that was a terrible indictment of teaching. Teaching is fundamental to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Please, Kate, continue.
Yeah, so I completely agree. So, you know, there's about these sort of horizontal policies about strong education system, proper compensation, exactly what David was saying in terms of standard setting and curriculum design, extremely important. I think when I look at my own history and the work I do at UCL, you know, I remember when I was an undergraduate, I was at Brown University, which has one of the best computer science programs in the US, particularly at that time. And I wanted to take computer science. This was something that would have been appropriate. You know, they were taking people who didn't have, you know, previous experience. And I was really worried about doing badly. You know, I think particularly high performing students become very, very risk adverse.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot about how we enable students to try new things, particularly when you think, oh, yeah, I'm 19, I'm way too old to start this, which, you know, of course, at all of our ages, we think that's the craziest thing we've ever heard. But when you're a student, you're a high performing student, you say, oh, I should have been doing this since I was 7 or 8, you know, this is, I'm over the hill. So I think a lot about how, particularly amongst very high performing, excellent students in higher ed, we de-risk or we encourage them to build back up their maths that maybe they haven't done in a few years and re-engage with statistics, or to do a little bit of programming, learn a programming language. And so I'm thinking a lot about how we reconnect students with some of that, where they might have taken themselves out of the game because of sort of this pressurized environment that they are. And so thinking about options around pass-fail, thinking about, you know, even how we just set up incentive structures, because the more our students are sort of multilingual across different disciplines, again, the better they're going to be able to perform. And, you know, if they're running a digital government program, which is very possible for many of my students, they don't need to be the programmers, they don't need to be the engineers, but they need to do a BS test and they need to understand what the engineers are talking about. So I'm thinking a lot about how we have them continue with STEM subjects, even if it's not going to be their careers, and how we encourage that, make it available, including using things like online resources like Khan Academy, like, you know, some basic things that just get you, you know, dust off some of your math skills you haven't used in a few years, and bring those in. Because I don't think it's the best use of my time to be teaching intro stats, but I do think everyone who does go back into that, you know, while they're in their master's program will benefit a lot from it. So yeah, de-risking, and particularly de-risking for high performing students, who I think are trickier actually than some of those who might be less risk adverse.
Thank you very much for that, Kate. I agree. And I think there's different ways that we can actually show different paths for students of any age that we normally just don't utilize. So one example of what we're doing in different places that I am lucky to either teach or support with innovation is the following. If you don't know what you should be doing for the rest of your life, which is normal because no one actually knows that well, or it cannot be completely certain, the best thing you can do is to try, right? And the problem many times is that you don't even know the options. And I think that one thing that is very easy for teachers, tutors, coaches, and institutions is to just show options. So what are possible career paths? What are ways to make money? What are different sectors, departments, roles? What are different even hobbies? I'm going to be a father in a month, and I am really looking forward to experimenting a lot just by showing the things that are, or the things that could be. And then, of course, in my case, it's a daughter. She can decide to do whatever she wants, but I don't want her to suddenly discover when she's 30 years old that she actually loved something because no one presented that to her, right? And when you're creative and very open-minded, and maybe you're not as focused as those high performers that you're talking about, Kate, but many people that are very open, then they're very willing to explore. But there's people that, because of their personality, because of their temperament, they're not going to be looking for so many different avenues. It's just, and even sometimes it depends on your environment. It even depends on what you suddenly stumble upon on social media that may or may not sparkle your imagination, right? So if you are not open to so many different avenues, but we have in the curriculum such a clear vision for the students of the different paths and the different things that they could be exploring with, and the most important skills that seem to be appropriate no matter what path you take. Because data analysis and financial literacy and even things like public relations, or there's so many skills that are vital no matter who you are, that at least if we make sure that people know that they don't have to be experts and perfect in anything they're doing, they just must at least have a more or less solid vision of what they can do and what can be done in collaboration with others. And I will go with you, David, in a second. But one of the things that you realize when you start delegating tasks to teams is that you don't need to be the one, as you were saying, Kate, that is doing the programming in the digital government, but you really want to know what are the technologies that exist. And if possible, even watch some tutorials of how things are done and some tools and resources that exist that make those pieces of work more effective. Because you can realize that a lot of people are going to tell you, no, it's not possible to do that. And maybe you as a leader can say, you know what, I'm sorry, it is very possible because I saw it. I don't know how to do it, but here you can see how people that know say that it's possible. So with that, David, can you let us know what you think about this?
Yeah, thank you. You just touched on something there that made me think that also a lot of this is down to career advice and guidance that's given at schools. And identifying those different routes into whether it's engineering or into any career, the information that's provided at school level needs to be current and up to date as well, because a career advisor at school is only as good as the career information that they have. And there are different ways now. There's not simply the academic route where you progress on to higher education and so on. There's obviously apprenticeship routes, and there's a new form that here in the UK there's something new called T-levels, which is a technical route, and things like that. So it's making sure that we can help schools provide that information, because for a lot of young people as well, unless their parents are involved in STEM, they may not be encouraged or influenced to go into it. Depending where they're located, there's a lot of things outside of the classroom that could influence a young person. So we need to make sure that the advice and the routes into careers, into STEM, into engineering is up to date and reflects how young people want to learn and progress today.
Absolutely. Love what you just said, David. I completely agree. And now I wanted to go back to Walt, because I can assume that you have seen many different education institutions. You are part of a very important think tank. You have been in touch with lots of different stakeholders. And I wanted to ask you about, what do you think is improvable? What do you think can be done to make things more exciting for students, more valuable in the interactions between different types of stakeholders? What do you think is wrong? How can we improve it? You were mentioning some of the things that you're concerned about, and the importance of having good teachers and fighting misinformation. What are things that you consider important and that we could do?
Good question, and difficult to answer. I have been thinking, well, in preparation for this panel, I've been thinking a lot about how I happen to get into doing what I do. Mm-hmm. It's a bit strange. It's certainly not what I would recommend as a money-making career. I was very lucky to meet and fall in love with a wonderful woman who got concerned about the same issues as I did. And in terms of environment back at the beginning of 1970. And she said to me more or less exactly, this needs to be done, Walt, and you can do it if you want to. And if you want to, I'll back you. And she did. And she became a very hardworking dentist. And eventually I became what they call the first energy campaigner for the UK wing of an international campaigning organization called Friends of the Earth. And at a party later that year, we got talking about fundraising, as you always had to in that organization. And my wife eventually intervened and said, other people give money to Friends of the Earth. I give Walt to Friends of the Earth, which is exactly true. She did. She supported me. She said, you make it exciting and I'll make sure we can pay the bills. And it turned out that we did manage to make it pretty exciting, because I got into running battles with extremely powerful organizations like the electricity and nuclear organizations in the UK. And that was unexpected, certainly. I don't think my professors at university in Canada would have anticipated the way it all worked out for me. But it turned out to be an extremely rewarding and satisfying thing to do. I was also lucky to be able to work with a lot of similarly dedicated and capable people, which is also an important factor. Not just how much you get paid, but whether you enjoy what you're doing, whether the work you're doing makes you feel that it's worthwhile. I think you'll find if you ask a lot of teenagers, the bright ones will say, well, I want my life to make a difference. I want to be able to improve things. I want to be able to make things better. I've encountered this often in discussions with school kids. And that is an aspect of STEM which really needs to be emphasized, that what you're equipping yourself with is tools that will help you make a difference.
Yep.
Tools that will help you contribute to a better world, not only for you, but also for your offspring. And that is an extremely valuable realization, to realize that you can do something that makes you feel better and feel good about yourself. I think one of the things that's proved to be quite interesting in my battle with the nuclear people is that nuclear industry has been finding it extremely difficult to recruit bright youngsters now, because the industry has finally gotten a very bad image with the public. Whereas when I'm talking about electricity, I'm telling youngsters how exciting it is now, the sort of stuff that's happening with electricity now. Not only what's happening, but where it's happening and who it's happening with. And again, a very rewarding kind of life available to you if you acquire these skills. And that again goes back to my earlier saying that we have to try and make this exciting. We have to try and make this something that people realize that they can get fired up about it. That it will be something that will make you want to go to work, not regret having to go to work. And that aspect of STEM activities is the one that I think we really ought to be laying a lot more emphasis on, that you actually look forward to your job and look forward to the work you're going to be doing. And you get reward out of it, which isn't just financial.
Thank you very much, Walt. I think it's exactly right. We need to align purpose and potential. And it's precisely the potential that you can reach thanks to those tools and thanks to having the right skills, and the importance of using that to achieve a goal that is beyond your own economic development, that of course should be also a way to align that as well. So we can have some sort of what I normally say, well-being, impact, and prosperity all align in your own career. And I think that what you said is beautiful also, because you're sharing it with the people that you love, fighting, of course, and with facing many challenges, but knowing why you're doing it. And I think that it has to be both exciting and also strange to see how much you were pioneering in this space and how much you were basically speaking in the desert, and now everybody's talking about this every single day. I think that you have definitely made a difference, and that now it's beautiful to see that more and more organizations are starting to realize the importance of purpose, and even if there's a part of the CSR and a part of the work that companies are doing that has to do with the trends and the market and the demands from consumers or regulations. The reality is that a lot of executives from large organizations, I am absolutely sure that they do care and they're doing their best to make things better. And I think that with that, we have a wonderful segue to Rocio that just appeared here. And I believe that is because they have something to say, to share with us maybe their questions, or just to tell us that we don't have more time. But Rocio is definitely one of those people that is working from large companies trying to make a difference.
Thank you so much. I really would like, before Diego starts with the question, I have once again my two questions now. Thank you so much, Kate, Walt, and David, for your insight. It was not only a lot of knowledge, but also very inspirational, and Carlos for moderating this event. But my two questions are, yesterday, during our second masterclass, Xavier Ross, who is a young mathematician who won a lot of awards, said, we're going to torch the mathematization of the business world. What do you think about that? If you think that it is really true that the industry and we're going to torch using more the math and the biggest protagonism of it, number one. And number two, a little bit what Walt was saying before, all these inspirational things. Do you think, how do you see the future of STEM careers with maybe more women, due to the fact that we maybe try to solve sustainability and solve things and problems that are maybe more social and more inspirational? Those are my two questions.
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
I entirely agree that I wanted to refer back to what Kate said about the social and the need to involve people who are, if you like, the cultural artistic people, and psychologists, philosophers, even people who think about the way society works. This is now at the Institute in London, where I am an associate fellow. We have just changed the name of our particular department. It's now called the Environment and Society Department, the Environment and Society program. And this, I think, is underlying the whole STM argument, is what is the nature of society? How do you think society should evolve? What do we need to change about the way we live with each other? And somebody earlier, I can't remember, it may have been David, mentioned the importance of stressing the role of cooperation rather than competition as an aspect of social interaction. Humans cooperate. Humans are extraordinary cooperators, but the ideology of what came to be called neoliberalism, with its emphasis on competition, that people were always competing, that people were always inimical to each other, that my interests are always contrary to yours and yours are always contrary to mine, misses the point. There is an opportunity for cooperation all the time, and that it is, to me, the kind of innovation that we really need more than anything else is an innovation in the way we think about the shape of society. and how society functions. We've been seeing a great deal happening with that in recent times, with emphasis on equality and diversity. The implications, for example, of the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements for the increased recognition of the important role of women in society and the contributions that women have to make to society. And that, I think, is critical for us to have on board, not just the people with qualifications in STEM, but also people who understand how we've got here, historians and philosophers, about the way humans think, about the language and semantics, the words we use and the language we use. The advertising industry is enormously powerful, and it is unfortunately mostly misused. We need to get the advertising industry on board with the kind of innovation that we are talking about, of a better world for everybody, not just for the wealthy and the people who happen to have been very lucky to have done something which has put them in an extremely powerful position, like Zuckerberg mentioned earlier. That I don't think we can necessarily leave the future to the people who have managed to corner such a disproportionately large share of the world's resources. So we need the philosophers and the sociologists as well, not just the engineers.
Thank you, Walt, for your answer.
I was just going to pick up on the comment about women in engineering. So if we look at engineering as an industry, we're currently on only around 13% are female, which is terribly low. And of course, the beautiful thing about diversity is it brings different thinking, different opinions, different ideas, and when the difference between men and women in their thinking, and we've only got 13% that are female, you can see immediately what a disadvantage we're at already. So that's something that needs addressing.
Thank you very much, David. Kate, do you want to add something on about the question?
Yeah, I think there's lots to say. Maybe that point about the mathematization of business is interesting. I think we get this sort of question about, what's a technology company anymore? Because all companies are using, different kinds of technologies, particularly digital technologies. So there's sort of, I think, some collapsing of categories where, there's a student who came and spoke at the Saïd Business School recently, who works in like marketing for a cosmetics company, and was talking about how it's all data analytics now, right? So someone who's working in cosmetics is actually doing a huge amount of, data mining, stats, all this sort of really interesting quantitative work. So I think it's increasingly becoming a lot of our lives, and particularly in areas that maybe wouldn't have been so tied to these kind of analytical processes. At the same time, I think we're also in a situation where, through different products, whether it be APIs or whether it be, standards, that we can do very sophisticated calculations, we can do very sophisticated things without having huge amounts of skills or background or expertise. And so there's sort of the barrier of entry to do some pretty interesting analysis that previously would have taken, a huge amount of knowledge you can do with an Excel sheet. So there's both sort of the mathematization, which I agree, but also I think some of this is becoming more and more accessible. And, that's not to mention things like, quantitative hedge funds and all of that, which are going fully in that direction. But I think, to reinforce what I said before, I think a baseline set of quantitative skills is becoming very, very common across people in business, marketing, education, everything, right? This is becoming a real sort of normal set of skills that I don't even sort of register as being being so distinctive anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Rocío, Diego, do you have anything in mind that we should be doing? Do you want to ask more questions?
Yeah, I would like to do another question because, as you know, here we have in the audience a lot of people who is participating in a hackathon this weekend. So I would like to ask you, what do you suggest them to all these problems that you were talking about? How do you focus them, or how you solve them in just a weekend, and which of them you should take, and you should be focused to make a solution, a digital solution, or to do a project? We will have just a weekend, so we just have to take one problem or to take a few of them and make a digital tool for the young generation. So what would you suggest?
Thank you very much, Diego. So I'm going to just add a little idea here for the participants. The first thing that I would say is that the world doesn't end after this hackathon. And because your careers are probably going to be very long, what I would suggest is that whatever you do, you consider it a seed of something that can become a wonderful project that you can work on for the rest of your life, or a part of the solution, or a part of the work that you're going to be doing in the future. So, of course, I cannot give you a framework in which in 2 days you have the perfect solution, because you can't just brainstorm and try to come up with something that is practical and that could potentially work. And that's, again, a seed. But I would try to think a little bit in the long term as well. Thinking, is this solution, the one you're proposing, something that could potentially be developed in different fields, that could have more implications, that could be profitable? What are other things that can be built on top of it? And just think that you have your entire career to continue using whatever you build these days, or whatever you start these days. So this doesn't solve the problem that Diego mentioned, but I judge and mentor many entrepreneurs. And many times they are so focused in whatever competition they're working on that they forget that they can actually create a project for their lives, or that they can actually create a company, or they can actually create a solution, and that it is more important the rest of their lives and what they're able to build together or independently than the actual award, even though the award is a great incentive and it's a wonderful initiative, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Walt, yeah, sure, please.
Can I offer a suggestion? I would say that the good starting place would be to examine your assumptions, to look very carefully at everything you think is correct, everything that you think is a starting point. What are you assuming, and are the assumptions valid? Are there other assumptions that you could use that would change where you go from there? In other words, don't necessarily assume that everything that you're starting with is correct. Assume that you might start from somewhere else.
That's great. Another point of view, of course. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, Walt. Kate?
Yeah, I think that I'll say something that's probably consistent with what I've said in my other comments. A lot of the cases that we teach in innovation strategy are sort of unexpected cases, like why do the best products not win, right? Where we have this view that everything is perfect competition and the best technology should rise to the top. But we've got lots of examples where that might not even be the case, including one of the famous cases we teach is the QWERTY keyboard. So that outline of the letters is an artifact of how typewriters worked, and now it's continued, even though some people say it's a slower standard. So we've got, the insight from that, saying that not always the best technology wins, is then you say, okay, so then what matters? What matters in a certain technology emerging? And so there's a huge literature on what we would again call the social envelope around technology. How does it fit into the social system, whether it be electric light, and there's a very good piece by Hartigan on this, or something like one laptop per child, which was a social innovation considered to be, top level Nick Negroponte MIT, and was a huge failure in terms of its impact because teachers didn't like to use it. So, there's, you can have a very nice technology, very nice app, but if it doesn't interface well with the group you're trying to work with, or it's poorly institutionalized, then it's not going to stick. So you need to be thinking about the hardware side and then also the software, which might be the user or the institutions around it.
Thank you very much, Kate. And I think that she's exactly right. And one thing that you can consider as well when you're working on your projects is that every single either startup or technology or innovation or scientific breakthrough comes from lots of iterations, lots of pivoting, and it is impossible that you have what it's called a product market fit the first minute, because there are things that you're going to need to explore and you're going to be evolving, and the product is going to become better. And one of the biggest reasons for failure, no matter what the project is, has to do with the time spent working in that particular project for what length of time. And what that means is that many times people decide that they have failed because they haven't gotten the results they wanted in a specific time frame, and maybe the exact result that they wanted was a little bit later, maybe 1 more year, maybe 2 more years. And if you're able to sustain your efforts and make sure that what you're doing has a way to be sustainable and profitable at some level, that is going to allow you to continue improving that project and continue improving and creating the ecosystem, or bringing the right partners, bringing the right team, bringing the right interest. Many times, and as Kate was saying, it is not perfect competition, perfect product at all. In fact, the world is full of wonderful solutions, and even the best possible solutions for problems that have been around for decades, and still people don't know about them. Sometimes it's the best PR. Sometimes it's having a founder that happens to be more influential. Sometimes it's having the right board of advisors. Sometimes it's the market trends in that particular moment. And the amount of factors that affect the success that you can achieve with whatever project you're doing is just ridiculous. I was analyzing the other day some of the factors that affect my own organization, and because I was a little bit concerned that we were not advancing as fast as I wanted. And I came up with 185 factors. And that was just randomly writing. So the idea that you can have everything figured out in 2 days, and that you're going to know everything, and you're going to create something that is going to be perfect in itself, and that you're going to throw to an app store and suddenly it's going to either explode or fail. Please, as Walt was saying, don't assume that just because something hasn't worked yet is not potentially going to work, that something that you're doing in one way cannot be adapted or be used in a different way. So just make sure that what you're building is something that is worth pursuing for a very long time. So you're going to make sure that you use all your brains and your collaboration with different types of help and partners to improve it to the point in which it is actually viable and it's a solution that can help many people.
You must also notice when something goes wrong, what it is and why it goes wrong. The famous discovery of penicillin, for example, when Fleming and company realized that something strange was happening in their petri dish. It wasn't just a mistake. Something was happening that they needed to explore and examine. And if they realized that the bit of fungus that they had dropped into the petri dish was actually killing the bacteria, and they didn't realize that it wasn't a mistake, it wasn't an error, something wasn't wrong, but something hadn't happened that they expected to happen. And the way it didn't happen the way they expected to happen, they had to notice. They had to notice what hadn't happened and why it hadn't happened. And that means that you have to pay very careful to what's going on in your project, so that as Carlos says, it may not be a mistake. It may be a lucky accident. And
That's
you have
true.
to recognize the potential of that lucky accident.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Carlos, Walt, Kate. I don't know, David, if you want to say something, any advice to the participants, but Kate has to go. I don't know if you want to say something to just to finish this roundtable.
Yeah, sure. I guess the biggest thing is, you know, you've a load of advice there, some really excellent advice, but just enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun, so just have fun, learn as you go, and go forward and change the world.
Yeah, that's a great conclusion. Change the world, have fun and change the world at the same time. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much, Carlos, Walt, Kate, and David for being here, and Rocío, Siemens Gamesa for the supporting of this event. So let's have fun, let's change the world, and let's hack also. Let's hacking this weekend.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you to
Bye-bye.
all of you for your participation.